He has come to attend the launching of the GONGA magazine of Forea. Mr. Honorable Bala, how are you, sir?
Fine, thank you.
What do you have to say, or what do you see in this launching?
I think, first of all, let me kindly express my gratitude and honor to be invited by the Pdois executive and the entire membership of Pdois to attend this very important ceremony, and that is the launching of the GONGA magazine. And GONGA in one of our local languages means truth. Therefore, it is in line with the principles of Pdois in terms of integrity, in terms of honesty, in terms of honor, and now GONGA. Therefore, I think what Pdois is asking for now is the building of a new Gambia. And indeed, they have taken a very correct position. In terms of having a new Gambia, you must have a new Gambian that will change the mindset. The mindset in believing in ourselves as Gambians, as one people and as one nation. And even going further, not only system change, but revolutionary system change in the sense of emancipating ourselves from mental slavery. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Bala, as you said, building a new Gambia and a new nation. Now, what do you have to say to build a new nation without knowledge or awareness? What is the impact of it?
To build a new nation without knowledge would be a contradiction, because to build a new nation, you must have people with political awareness. Political consciousness is like a ladder. The first has been achieved, that is regime change. And now the second part of the ladder is system change. And you cannot have a new Gambian without the knowledge, without the awareness, without the political consciousness, so that we can see ourselves as one nation, not as Muslims or Christians or Fullers or Mandinkas or as Jolas. Now we want to build a nation. You see yourself as a Gambian and nothing else. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. All other protocols respectfully observed. Today is a great day in the life of this country and in the life of our party. It is a great day because what, in my view, was not considered important by the first generation of politicians on the African continent is today being given serious consideration. And what is that? That is the fact that a party is an instrument of leadership. As such, it has to perform certain fundamental functions. A blind leadership cannot lead people to enlightenment, peace, and progress. It can only lead them into a ditch by keeping them at bay. The new Gambia is a mathematical equation, which is the new Gambia plus a new Gambian plus enlightenment and plus sovereignty. And this mathematical equation, unless it is resolved, the new Gambia can never be. So, the fundamental function to be played by the magazine that is to be launched today is precisely to enlighten and inform adequately with a view to empowering people for sovereign citizenship. GONGA, which is in full language, meaning truth, will serve the function of enlightening people and also informing them on all the fundamental issues regarding the life of this country, so that they become sovereign in whatever decision they make regarding the management of the affairs of this country. It is not the first time that GONGA came to the fore. I think some of you would remember that there was one publication of GONGA some years ago. There are reasons why it came to a stop. The reviewer will go into explaining some of those matters. But for today, I welcome you all and thank you for taking your time to come here this morning so that together we can begin the process of consolidating and promoting the new Gambia that came into being in 2016. But as I said earlier, the new Gambia will remain expression unless people assume the responsibility as sovereign citizens to choose those in consciousness and enlightenment who will be entrusted with the responsibility to manage the affairs of this republic. I'm not going to speak long. And once more, thank you very much for having come. And together, we have the responsibility to make GONGA survive, because it is the fundamental instrument that is going to be used to empower people for sovereign citizenship. Thank you very much. And I call upon Atiami.
Thank you very much, Sidi. So my role is to introduce Mr. Halifa Sallah, who is the Secretary General of Pdois. So he's going to tell us about GONGA, why we should support GONGA, because GONGA is our paper. So it should mobilize us, it should organize us, and enlighten us. And each section of society is being touched. So everybody should read the GONGA. So Halifa is going to tell you more about the GONGA, and then we'll continue with the program. Thank you very much for your attention.
There can be no new Gambia without a new Gambian. That's what brought us here today. We thank those who are capable of making it. And I must take full responsibility, because our organizers were discouraged from many angles that there are so many activities that it is not prudent to hold this activity today. But through discussion, we managed to convince each other that delay would be irresponsible. Gambia is in crisis, and it's a crisis of mindset. We have a nation, but we do not agree on which path to take to build a nation where all of us will call our homeland. And we are heading towards December, and it was seen absolutely necessary, regardless of the odds, to hold this lunch today. Who are we? That is what we are here to define. What do we own? That is what we are here to identify. What should be our duty? That is what we are here to determine. We must take charge of our destiny. But we cannot take charge of our destiny until we know who we are. The GONGA aims to help us to understand who we are. That on the 10th of August, 1889, this territory that we now call the Gambia was defined not by us, but by those who colonized us. The French and the British sat down and agreed on the borders of what we now call the Gambia. Those people who owned the territory did not agree. They continued to see occupation forces being established, and they had to confront those occupation forces until they were ultimately defeated. But before defeating them, just like the CRC is doing now, they had to sit down and ask themselves, how will we govern this country when we dominate all her people? 1894, they started what they called the Protectorate Ordinance, where they divided the country into a colony and protectorate. To be able to govern, they saw that, well, they must have local chiefs to control the district. And those chiefs will be controlled by commissioners from their land, who would be under a governor from their land. Then they will create force, police force, armed force, security force, to impose their will on the people. That force became an instrument of coercion that will suppress every demand for right, conceiving the demand to be either treason or sedition, imprisonment or death for challenging the crown. That was the colonial order. In 1920, the resistance intensified. Why? We need to know our history. You hear intellectuals in our universities telling you that democracy is government of the people, for the people, and by the people. This came from Lincoln. Or they will quote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But in 1919, the Pan-African Congress met, and Africans from the diaspora and from the continent met in Paris, the Pdois, the Blessed Giants, and they came up with their resolutions that we must ensure that Africans demand their rights and get it. That they must ensure that Africa is ruled by the consent of Africans. That is democracy. 1919. That government must exist for the people, not people for the government. 1919. That is democracy. And that is why the Edward Francis Small said, no taxation without representation. 1920. We are here today. How many of us ask where our taxes go? How many of us go and vote and said a program has been put before us and this is how it's going to address our needs and aspirations. Therefore, we take our ballot and cast it on the basis of a program. Since 1920, we were being educated that we own the country, the tax money belongs to us, the national coffers belong to us, and it should be utilized in our interests. Therefore, we must demand and determine who should manage it in our interests. We continue to struggle, and the colonial order continued to intensify domination. The demand to take charge of our destiny started with the demand that the advisory bodies they establish must also be constituted by people elected by us. They refused. It had to be a struggle until 1947 before they allowed election to the Legislative Council for one seat won by Edward Francis Small. That is your history. Why are we here today? How did it happen? Are they teaching that in our school systems? In 1951, they increased it to 3. But those who participated had to rely on the wealthy in Bathurst in order to build their political organizations. And those who could get patronage had political control. So the vast majority of people were just waiting to be patronized to support one patron or the other. But then the struggle continued until 1959, when new forces also emerged, that there should be greater representation from the rural areas. And that brought about the 1960 universal suffrage, where elections took place throughout the country. Some people claim that the party we came into being had the support of provincial people. Some even put ethnicity on the line. But the records reveal that it received only 26% of the votes. And 29% voted independent. Who were those? That shows that Gambia was evolving without the sovereign Gambian evolving. Politics was for its sake rather than for the people. Government that exists for the people was not the objective. It's the people existing for the government. The struggle continued. 1961, January, the workers' union demanded for better working conditions and wages, 90% increase. The colonialists rejected the demand. They went to the street. Today you hear about civil society. How does it emerge? Well, some people came to assist us to build civil society to control the democratic space. 1961, I was in Serekunda school, and you saw the unionists marching, workers. Jallo is our leader, we shall not be moved. Jallo is our leader, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that standeth by the water side, we shall not be moved. Fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved. I was a toddler in primary school. They came and asked all the teachers to leave, and the schools were closed because the civil servants also joined them. And the country had to go through a crisis. The union leaders arrested, order to suppress them drafted. But ultimately, the force of liberation became too strong, and they had to call a constitutional conference. Where are the unions today? What is their role in society in defending the working people? What rights do they have? Where is the Joint Industrial Council that negotiates better working conditions? And we talk about democracy. People existing for government, not government existing for people. We attained independence in 1965. A referendum held, just like we are about to hold a referendum. And there is debate. What type of constitution? Who are going to be the citizens? Will we have second round of voting or not? What are your views? Have you come to decision yet? Are we a people? How are we going to vote? On the basis of the political parties we support or political personalities we support? That's what happened in 1965. The referendum failed, and the fundamental question was, should we move from a constitutional monarchy where the British crown was still the executive and had to assent to bill from the House of Representatives before the bill becomes law? We could not have 2/3 majority, and therefore we could not become a republic. Who educated the people? 1970, we had 2/3 majority, but the people who brought it about did not know that we were now moving to become a sovereign republic. And that's what GONGA aims to help you to understand. That in a sovereign republic, sovereignty, power resides in each of us. And since 1970, each of us should have been taught to understand that now we are free and we are sovereign. We are new Gambians. We own power, and leaders are there just to serve us. They are our public trustees. That should have been clear in 1970. Before the drafting of that constitution, the consultation should have gone to that level so that every Gambian will understand the birth of the new nation. Did we understand? Gambia continued and Pdois emerged. Why did it emerge? We, like Edward Francis Small, became exposed to universal knowledge. How states operate, how constitutions are built, how economies are built, what is the basis of ensuring that people live in liberty and prosperity. We turn and look back and saw a society in shambles. People in the rural areas living in huts, no roads, no hospitals, no schools, too scarce to help uplift the population. We saw people living in poverty, having been born in poverty, growing in poverty, aging in poverty, and dying in poverty. We ask ourselves the question, do we belong to these people? Is this the Africa that people fought for to be liberated? That people died for to be liberated? That people were imprisoned for to be liberated? Tortured for to be liberated? Is that the Africa? Our answer was, our education was meaningless unless we transform that education into a tool of liberation, of eradicating the poverty of our people and tyrannical subjugation. We saw that we need to establish a political party whose fundamental aim would be to eradicate poverty and tyranny. That's why Pdois came into being. 1994, a coup d'etat. And we ask ourselves the question, when people own a society, could you impose your will, or should you impose your will on them? How would you feel to wake up in the morning, somebody comes to your home, wake you up, and say that now I'm the head of the family? We say the nation is the same. We own it collectively. No one has a right to rule over us. We determine who lead us based on our consent. That is what the Republic is all about. That's why we said the coup makers were mistaken by assuming the reins of the state. You can remove one public trustee, but then go back to the people and empower them so that they will be able to select another public trustee. But to force yourself to become the public trustee itself through the barrel of the gun means that you cannot in any way be scrutinized, criticized, restrained, or removed when the people desire. That was an abrogation of the principle of the sovereignty of the people. That is why we did not concede to that change. We pushed them so that we can move back to a system where, no matter how crude, the people will determine their manner of government. And that is why in 1996, elections to the office of president was held again. And a constitution was drafted to guide any new process in managing the affairs of the state. Many people question that Pdois which emerged in 1986, educating the citizenry to understand that power belongs to them, to understand the resources of the country belongs to them. Why is it that in 1996, after going through all the struggles in pushing the country to move towards the restoration of the republic, Pdois did not find itself at the helm? Many people continue to beg the question, should Pdois not reinvent itself? Shouldn't it change its politics? How will it get to power? We are sure that may exercise the minds of some people here. That is why today we invited everybody who could be critical about our policies. The business community, the media, the university professors, the best critics that you read about. We've invited everybody here. We did not go and mobilize just our supporters and come and fill a hall. Because this is not a showcase of popularity. We are putting ourselves under scrutiny for us to be subjected to criticism, so that we answer back and begin a new process. That's why we are here. For Pdois, we learned from the very beginning that no opposition party has ever removed a ruling party from office in this country. So to us, that was the wrong way. No opposition party had ever removed a ruling party from office through the ballot box. What was wrong? What we discovered to be wrong is that political parties were based on patronage. And the ruling party will always have more wealth than an opposition party. So patronage alone will never lead an opposition party to remove a ruling party from office. You can just patronize more and get bigger until you reach your size and you deflate. We discovered that that was not the way to come to the helm, especially when our fundamental objective was to eradicate poverty and tyranny. What was the way? Before 1996, we saw the need to educate so that the sovereign Gambian will know that power belongs to him or her. That as long as there is that mental chain, he or she will not be conscious of that power, and others will take ownership of that power and subjugate them. That our fundamental task was to break that mental chain, and that cannot be broken without enlightenment. Only knowledge was the key through which we will break that mental chain. We signed a contract with destiny that all our lives we will continue fighting until that mental chain is broken, not for one Gambian, not for two, but for the vast majority of Gambians. When that happens, that is the end to tyranny. When that happens, that is the end to deception. then that happens, that is the end to misrepresentation, because we will not allow it. Nobody will lead us who is misleading us, who is also maltreating us. That is the challenge that Pdois took, and never to sway away from that direction. But in 1996, politics changed. Those who ruled relied on a coalition of many people who belonged to various political parties coming to support the power that be. But also on the side of the opposition, a coalition emerged of PPP, GPP, NCP to create the UDP coalition. When that happens, Pdois went back to the drawing board. And so the politics has changed. It has now become coalition politics. No single party could remove a regime which is entrenched by its own program and policy. What we predicted became the reality. 2001, what happened? The coalition went to pieces. They went to the presidential election divided. The NCP had to go alone as a party. Others continued with a semblance of a coalition. The election was lost, but the lesson was also learned by the NCP. That Diba, a doyen of politics, immensely respected in the First Republic as an opposition leader, with tremendous popularity, went to the elections in 2001 and had less votes than Mr. Hamad Ba. And our pundits did not go back to the drawing board to try to study the politics of the country. Why did that happen? Under normal circumstances, in the First Republic, will you put Diba and Ba to contest in a presidential election? So in essence, people fail to realize that no party was able to remove a ruling party from office. And NCP learned that lesson. We won more seats in 2002 National Assembly election than the NRP. Pdois could have continued to become bigger by building more resources, expanding our support among the young population, and work for another 5 years to say, well, we'll have 10 seats in the next following election. We could have utilized that strategy. Most likely we could have gained more seats, just like we have gained more seats very recently. But Pdois' focus was changing a system. And we realized that we cannot change a system until we could change the regime. Because most Gambians were taught that nobody can remove a ruling party from office. Karta keso buka mansa boyindi. Karta munuta gene bour ci rew. That was the mindset. We had to change that mindset. And that is precisely the reason why we agreed to coordinate coalitions, so that we can have regime change, and the regime change will bring about awareness building so that the people will take charge of their destiny. We accepted to coordinate NAD, bring all the opposition together in 2006, all went to pieces. But in 2005, all of you know that NAD engaged in 6 by-elections and won all 4, had the majority in the popular vote. We saw that coalition could bring about regime change. But the regime change that should ensure that we move towards sovereign ownership of our power must be guided regime change. That is why NAD said nobody will be the presidential candidate other than the person who will start on the NAD, not any other party. And when that happens, we will ensure that for the 5 years we'll all work together to build a new country. Use the media to educate our people so that they take ownership of power. When we do that, we will ensure that the person who is elected will just be there for 5 years and nothing more. Will not stand in the next following election and will not take sides. That's what we agreed. In order to create the basis for a new Gambian to emerge and for system change to be possible. That did not work out. 2011 we tried, it did not work out. 2016, change came. A regime change came. The GONGA has explained the players how 6 presidential candidates came to Kairaba, 5 invited by the Pdois presidential candidate to discuss about building a coalition. Those who did not take part in that primary process cannot explain anything why it happened in the first place. And it is important for us to explain what actually happened. The regime became very powerful because some young people took to the street, eventually arrested. One lost his life. They talk about electoral reform. But in essence, there could not have been any form of electoral reform through pressure. 100 people going to Westfield Clinic cannot pressurize a government to change electoral laws. There were many people in the diaspora who were desperate. And many believed that change could never come through the ballot box. Consequently, many felt that unless there was a mass uprising, there will be no change. And in a country where people depend on getting a bag of rice or sugar to vote for a candidate, what or which sane mind will believe that those people will take the street and remove a government from power? So it was very clear that 2 tactics were possible: mass uprising or coalition building. We moved towards coalition building. Read our agenda 2015. We analyzed everything that would convince someone that coalition building was possible and change was possible. But some did not believe that that was possible. And therefore, many believed that there must be a mass uprising. So the state was very much ready for that and was focused on that, well armed for it. And some young people who met at Tango, whom I've heard saying over TV, etc., that they were building a coalition, they will tell you Pdois was never a part of that because they were there right in the net of the NIA, just waiting for time to be cleared. There was no force, nobody building any form of coalition that could have materialized to effect the change of 2nd December 2016. And anybody who claims anything to the contrary, we invited everybody, and we are going to have more and more symposia. Our young people are ready now. They are shaped. You've had them in the forum, and their forums are going to expand, and they'll become more disciplined. We'll ensure that there is no infiltration by those who insult, those who have no message. A person who insults has no message. An empty brain cannot change a country. We don't want Pdois supporters who insult. If you do, you are not our supporter. Go and find another party. We are a party of thinkers, ready to challenge ideas in order to determine how our country will be able to eradicate poverty and tyranny. It's the poverty of our people that is in our minds and hearts. That's what's sickening us. That's what pricks us. When we see these women with their babies on their back under the hot sun in the street everywhere trying to sell to be able to have a day's meal. That is what pricks our heart. Nobody should tell you that anybody, anywhere, organized anything to build a coalition that led to the change of 2nd December 2016, other than the trajectory of the meetings that started at Kairaba. That is what gave rise to further discussion, and I continue to emphasize, this nation must honor Dembo Bojang. This nation must honor Dembo Bojang. I promise him that what he did will be said everywhere. When the UDP leaders were at mile 2, he came to the inter-party committee, worked with us. The inter-party committee combined together. We went to Tujereng, we went to Kafuta. There is nobody's home that we had not visited who proved to have been in detention, whom we knew. With him, many people don't know. Many people in that party even are not aware of that. Maybe the leadership is not even aware. But that's what happened. And he was working closely with us to try to influence the state for their release. Somebody asked him to call for a meeting of the Gambia opposition for electoral reform. He went to every hotel, he could not organize it. And he came to me, I said, well, that trajectory is not my trajectory. Just wait. We have started something, and everything will work out for good. And he waited. When the time was up, he was seen that now called the meeting of the opposition parties, invite every stakeholder so that they know that we did not want to elbow anyone, because some felt that we were trying to elbow people so that we can be the presidential candidate. But we wanted this to be a clean process. And I am confident that when we started meeting at Kairaba, the head of state must have said, so these people are meeting at Kairaba. They are really ready for election, because he will know everything that we are saying there. If we met elsewhere, somebody will go to him and say they are meeting to overthrow you. The arrest would have started. So meeting at Kairaba was a tactical move, so that he knows that we are ready for election. And he must have said, I've already won the election, leave them to meet there. They are dreaming. I hope he will write his biography. So essentially, this is the change that occurred. We eventually signed a memorandum of understanding, agreed that the person who will be selected president will resign from his party, so that the candidate will be a candidate of the Gambian nation and will be there for 3 years and we'll work together as one people, not parties, to build a constitution, build the laws, build the institutions, change the security apparatus, give them a new direction and mentality. Rather than force, they become service. Everything was outlined, captured in a manifesto, campaign. All Gambians became united. Even if you oppose us, you did not hate us. The ruling party became more tolerant. Its members became more tolerant. We didn't hear fighting. We didn't hear arrests. The little that happened, I just go and then negotiate, and that will be the end. We manage young, free them from insults, give them greater spirit, greater culture, and they listened to us. And they were in their tens of thousands, but we guided them. They accepted guidance. And ultimately, we effected the change to be able to consolidate one Gambia, one nation, one people. One Gambia, one nation, one people. That was the slogan. So in essence, the victory brought about the first change of a ruling party through the ballot box for the first time in Gambian history. We went into the impasse. The impasse could have led to war. A lot of lives would have been lost. Eventually, we managed it. And when the defeated president decided to leave, there was a power vacuum. The president was in Dakar. What should the security forces do under those circumstances? Who will control the banks, the government departments, government papers, documents? So that only happened. I'm just not explaining. But there are many people to be honored. The former Secretary General had to be directed to direct all the permanent secretaries to ensure that not a single leaf disappeared, that they should manage their offices, otherwise they'll be accountable. And they should be ready for the coming of the new president. The current Minister of Interior was the liaison with the security chiefs. The day the president was sworn, he was called. What is your position now? Everything is okay. We are with the Constitution. That was his word. We are for the Constitution. But what is happening at State House? Well, we believe that he will go. That's where I was getting correct information. When he was ready to go, well, we now know that he is going. We started our meetings right there with the security forces. The people who flee the Gambia became refugees, had to be brought back. The security chiefs and my very self, we met, we agreed with our committees. And everybody could see Honorable Silla at that time. Maybe that's why you won in Banjul. But everywhere, being sent everywhere to go with Red Cross, the Fatu Gays, so that we prepare, gain resources. The security chiefs got water, everything from the business companies. They coordinated everything with our team. We brought those refugees back. All this is not said because we don't think it is necessary to try to build an image of what is a duty. To build an image out of what is a duty. Then the issue of economic coming into the country. Gambians were saying, come and liberate us. And if that happened, how many deaths? When the man left, what was going to be their role? That had to be defined. How they came in had to be defined. The position of our own security had to be defined. And only 2 people knew exactly what was happening, and 3 after a given stage. And that's how everything was organized for those security forces to come into this country with calmness, as a force of solidarity rather than a force of invasion. So now the GONGA has explained very clearly what happened about these 3 years. And Pdois has taken a very clear position. It has analyzed the Constitution, all its parts. You will see it in the GONGA, telling you that when we met, it was a meeting of equals. And whatever they agree is binding to all of them. And whatever they agreed had to be respected by all. Because when we met and said that you must resign from your party to stand, if anybody said, no, I will not resign, then you will not be our candidate. So to be our candidate, by force, you will do what we want you to do. If we say you'll be there for 3 years, if you don't want to be 3 years, that's when you should have negotiated and say, no, I want 5 years, then you will not be our candidate. Because you cannot force us to select you. So you have to accept 3 years. If we say there will be election after the 3 years, you cannot say no. The Constitution gives me a mandate of 5 years, we will not select you. That you will not side with anybody and you will not stand in the next following election, you cannot say no. Because if you say no, you will not be our candidate. When we met to decide, we were equals. And bear that in mind. But when we select you, and you become the president of the republic, we are no longer equals. You are now the president of a republic under a constitution. You have your armed forces, your security forces, designed to protect the constituted, legitimate president of the republic. You have the laws that talk about treason, all sorts of laws. So it means that once you are elected a president, you are no longer equal to a coalition. And those who say the coalition should have prepared something so that this will not happen, that how can you allow this to happen? But how can you even think that a political party, not in office, a coalition not in office, can dictate terms to a president under a constitution? That is what must be clear. And it is clarified by GONGA that once the president became president, he has to operate under a constitution. And only 2 sections are pertinent to this argument of 3 years, 5 years. Section 65, which says that the office of president becomes vacant when he dies, when he resigns, and it's that resignation that matters. That for the coalition, we expected that after 3 years, the president will voluntarily resign. And we would have amended the constitution to make it possible to hold elections as we planned. That would have required constitutional reforms. That could have taken place in a year, if we wanted. We'll wait for your questions so that we will not keep you here for too long. But what you must bear in mind is that we anticipated that the president would resign. And we did not anticipate when we were making the rule that it was going to be President Barrow. We did not know who will be our candidate when we made the rule. So it was not directed at a personality. It is a process. We also know very well what is in Section 63. Because when Jammeh said that he will no longer accept the results, you, the Gambian people, heard me as the spokesperson of the president saying that under our constitution, elections is held within 3 months of the end of the term of the incumbent. So the incumbent has a 5-year term, but within 3 months before the end of the 5-year term, the incumbent, there must be election to the presidency. So if there is election, then the incumbent still has some time left for the 5-year to come to an end. We told you that. And you heard it loud and clear. I was emphasizing over and over again, the coalition members should wait for 18 January. They should wait until his term ends. Because when his term ends, if he spends a day longer, he will be a rebel. You've heard it. Why did we say that? Because that's what the Constitution says, that he has a 5-year mandate. So we knew that very well. But we wanted to give Gambia a new start. 30 years of one government in the First Republic. 22 years, we said that that is enough. Let's now give an example of 3 years. Then whoever comes again, if we have 2-term limit of 5 years, you will not think of staying in power or amending the constitution again like we've seen in Guinea. You can even have a term limit and the president comes up to the end of the term and try to again to see how they can change. We wanted to give an example, because if that example happened, obviously Gambia would have been saved for eternity from self-perpetuating rule. That's why we did that. But now what is the situation? We keep on pushing the president that tell us what is your decision. A coalition will not meet again and say that they are revising the agreement to give you 5 years. That will not happen. At least over our dead body. Because we will show that whoever wants to do that, that you are just misleading yourself. Because we know that you will not have any legal argument to be able to do that. So consequently, we emphasize that it is left to the president to say that he will stay for 3 years or he will stay for 5 years. That's his prerogative. And we will not do that explanation for him. As long as he does not do the explanation, we take it that he's going to be there for 3 years. But all of you heard in unison, the vice president said that their first cabinet meeting, they agreed that the president will stay for 5 years. When the vice president said that in Parliament, at the National Assembly, for us, Pdois, that was the end. It means that the president has decided to stay for 5 years. We cannot force him to exercise a prerogative to resign, because that's a prerogative. If he stays for 5 years and wants to stay 1 day, the same language we use against Jammeh will be used against Barrow. Stay there 1 more day, and you will be a rebel. That is the constitutional provision. People have a right to demonstrate. But we, the Pdois people, we do things that have purpose. To go in the street The president, you promised us something, you should resign. And he said, I will not resign. You are there for 1 week, 2 weeks, and you go back to your home, and he's still the president of the republic. We don't see any meaning in that. For the Doi people, we take it that, well, that was your word. You've reneged. That's left to you and history. We will begin the new journey. And that's the new journey that GONGA wishes to take with you. The new journey is we have effected regime change. I constantly tell my colleagues, for me, if I die today, I will die in peace. You will be surprised with all the poverty. Today, if I die, I will die in peace. Because the Gambian people are liberated. For 52 years, you believed that the vote cannot remove a president from office, that we have a monarchy. On the 2nd of December, 2016, you went and removed an entrenched power with military and economic might from office. Who on earth can be entrenched again? Against your will. So in essence, on the 2nd of December, all of you discovered your sovereign power. You have the might of the land in your hands. If you are divided, you will be weak. If you are united, you are mightier than thou. So that is the liberation. I am convinced now that in the next following election, whatever Gambians do, that's their will. And they have their will to live in poverty for eternity. Who am I to tell them not to have that will? Our duty was to effect regime change so that you can take charge of your destiny. And now your destiny is in your own hands. If you are now to be the architect of your own destiny, you want to build this hall, you must plan. You must know the sketch. And that is what you are required to do to be new Gambians. Whoever wants to lead you must give you the sketch plan that he or she or the party wishes to rely on to address your needs and aspirations. Then you select them, just like you select the builder to build your house. That's your duty. And that's what GONGA is emphasizing. That the people are awakened and they will never go to sleep again. They have discovered their right, that they have a say, and will never be silent again. What is important now is for us to build a community that can engage in conversation about the destiny of our land. To be able to exchange ideas so that we can make informed decisions. The GONGA is reflecting what Pdois is saying. Pdois is saying that there are 7 pillars that must be looked at and built before you can have a self-reliant and self-determination capable of eradicating poverty and tyranny. We emphasize that there is the economic pillar. This year, you are going to put $28.7 billion in the national coffers. 25.3 is what comes from your tax, non-tax, and also from foreign support, external support. But 3.4 billion is left. You must go and borrow to have that part. And your debt has increased to 65.9 billion and increasing. If you share the debt portfolio, each Gambian, even a newly born one, because we are not yet 2 million, will carry a debt burden of $28,000. That's what the GONGA is telling you. Now, how are we going to eradicate poverty? That is the question. That you are giving wealth to a government to manage for you. How are they going to use the resources to provide you with better health, education, better roads, employment, all sorts of services, electricity, water supply? How are we going to bring that about? That is what must be determined by the economic pillar. What Pdois is proposing, and listen very carefully. You will hear people say Pdois is socialist. They said when they come to power, everybody's property will be seized and distributed equally. We are telling you that you have a debt of 65.9 billion. That's the poverty that is distributed. That's why you have 48% of the population living on less than $1 a day. So we are saying that you need to know what economic policy is and what policies will eradicate our poverty. Our solution is simply this: that you have to understand your population. The vast majority of people are living in the rural areas. Most are farmers. There is a growing youth population. They'll give you the statistics that youth employment is this, is all false. I've interrogated the minister and said that Section 44 of the Labor Act is saying all those who are seeking jobs should go and get registered. They have not even started the registration process. How can they determine unemployment rate? Unless they have a larger market outside, they'll not be able to sell their goods. And if they cannot sell their goods, their people will not be employed. If they are not employed, what will happen? They will die in the street. And that is what was happening. The First World War, Second World War, you saw all sorts of crises in Europe because of that type of suffering, depressions. That's a long story, and we'll come back to these issues in your universities, in your schools, in halls.